Hi, I'm Sai, and today I'm going to be reviewing this Acasis NVMe SSD Enclosure. I'm going to be using it with this Western Digital SN770 internal gaming solid state drive, and I'm going to be using this for my brand new Mac Mini M.2. This Acasis SSD Enclosure has speeds of up to 40 gigabytes per second, but that is going to be bottlenecked by the speed of your SSD, and this one particularly has read-write speeds up to about 5,000 megabytes per second or 5 gigabytes per second, and that is much faster than our Mac Mini M.2 at the base model with read-write speeds of only about 1,500 megabytes per second. So I'm very excited, and we're going to be setting this up in a way to make it optimal to use with our Mac Mini M.2. This Acasis SSD enclosure is compatible with Thunderbolt and also USB 3.2, 3.1, 3.0, and 2.0. It comes with the Thunderbolt cable, and it also comes with a thermal pad. We're going to be opening the box and installing our SSD drive inside, so you'll get to see how we do that right now. So here's the box. You can view up close and get some of the details here. You can see our Thunderbolt cable here. It even comes with a little screwdriver so we can easily attach our SSD. This is the thermal pad with the little screws enclosed. It's our user manual and our actual SSD enclosure. Let's go ahead and open it up. We've got our Acasis case open here, and you can see it actually comes with the back off already, and we'll go ahead and install our Western Digital SSD inside and then put our thermal pad on before we close it up with the screws that are in this bag here. We'll go ahead and take our SSD and gently insert it in here, just like that. Take our smaller screw, put it on the end of the screwdriver to make it easy. There you can see, and I've just gently tightened it to the point where it's snug. We'll go ahead and put our thermal pad on, and it appears it comes with two different thicknesses of thermal pad. I'm going to go ahead and use the thicker one. And then we'll go ahead and put our case cover back on. And we'll just screw them in until it's snug. Now we're going to go ahead and connect it directly to our Mac through a Thunderbolt port. Now that it's connected, we're going to go ahead and find it. And this is perfectly normal. You can see it says the disk you attached was not readable by this computer. So we are going to go ahead and ignore that and put initialize. And you can see that it has detected our SN770, which is inside the Acasis, which is awesome. We are going to go ahead and erase the disk. We're going to leave this at the default. And we're going to make sure this says the APFS, which if you're using another type of computer, you might want to use exFAT because that is compatible with both PC and Mac. But if you're just using an Apple computer and you want it to be an optimal file storage for Apple, then use the APFS. And I'm just going to give this a name, and we'll erase. And we'll say done.
And we'll go to our external SSD.
And you can see that we have 2 terabytes free.
And so our external SSD
is where we're going to be putting our Photos libraries, our iMovie libraries, and our Final Cut Pro libraries so that we can optimize our machine, and I'll show you how to do that right away.
And so you can see here, I went to our movies, and you can see that you get it through your user. So find your user, and then you go to movies, and you won't see these here, the iMovie library and the iMovie theater, if you've never opened up iMovie. So if it's your first time and you don't see these here, then you go ahead and double click on your iMovie and it'll open up, and then you'll see these 2 files appear here. And so you can see here, I have the external storage, which is our SSD enclosure with the SSD inside. And I have created a folder for iMovie. It's currently empty, but we're going to go ahead and open it up. And it's called iMovie External. You see it's empty. So we're going to go over here to our movies, and we're going to highlight them both. While they're highlighted, say Command C. Now I've got them copied, and I'm going to go over to my external storage where I've created the new folder, and I'm going to say Command V. And now I've copied them there. Now if you have a large iMovie file, meaning you already have movies on it, then you'll want to be more careful than when I'm going to be doing this. But it's basically the same process. You're copying your iMovie libraries over to your external hard drive. So now that I've copied the iMovie library file and the iMovie theater file over to my external drive, I'm just going to delete the iMovie library. And so I'm going to go ahead and put that in the trash. And now I'm going to train iMovie to recognize the external files. So I'm going to go ahead and rename them so it's clear that there is an external file. I'm just going to say external. The next thing to do then is to go to the applications. And so I'll highlight it first, but then I'm going to hold the option key down and I'm going to double click and I'm going to keep holding the option key. So I've double clicked. Now you can see I want to use my iMovie library, which is the external library. So I'm going to go ahead, click on it, and I'm going to choose. And now iMovie should be trained to open up to our external drive. So I'll go ahead now and I'll just say quit iMovie. Now I'm going to go back to my applications. I'll open up a new window. Go back to my applications, double click iMovie, and it should open up to this external library here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now you can see I'm in iMovie, and if I click here on media, you can see iMovie library external. That's the only library it shows, and that's the only one we have. And this was a fresh install, so I wasn't worried about losing anything. If you are doing this with a library file that has lots of movies in it, go through these steps and verify that you've got all your movies in your new library before you delete your old. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and just control click or right click on my trash and say empty the trash. It says, you sure you want to empty the trash? Yes. You can see there's nothing in my trash, and we can go back to the Finder windows, and you can see there is no iMovie library inside of my movies anymore. I'm working completely off the external iMovie library. So for now, we'll go ahead and close iMovie, and we're going to do a similar thing with photos. You can see here, I'm in my pictures. That is where your iPhoto library will be, but I'll show you another way to find it in case you don't find it easy from your desktop. So for example, under my user, in pictures, this is what we're looking at, and we're going to copy this to an external drive, which is this drive right here. You can see I created this folder, so I'm just going to open it up here, and that is where we're going to copy our file. But first, we're going to go ahead and open up Photos, and if it's not here, you can find it in your applications. I'm just going to double click it. This is the first time ever opening it, and we're going to make sure a couple of things are set up right, and this might be especially important for you if you already have photos in your library, which I don't. So we'll open it up. We'll just say get started. Let's look at my imports. I shouldn't have anything in here. Okay. And so we're going to go up to our photos, preferences, or settings in this case. And you can see it says it's under my user, the pictures, and where I showed you. And so I could say show in Finder, and you can see here it is up here. If we look here, there's some settings that we can check, but one thing that is important is to make sure that you copy your items to the iPhoto library. You want to have this checked just to make sure that your photos are actually in your library. And if we go here, you're going to see this is going to be something that's going to be important for you, especially if you have lots of photos, because you might have photos in your library, but they might not be stored there. They might be all in iCloud, or many of them might be in iCloud. So you're going to want to say download your originals to this Mac. What I would do in this case is I would go ahead and close out of your photos after you've done that change in your settings. Then I would reopen it and then just make sure that your photos are on your photo library and not just stored in the cloud. So that's a very important place to check there. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and close preferences for now, and then you can close your photos, so you can quit your photos, and then we are just going to simply either drag our photos library over here, which would make a copy, or I can just say Command C, and that copies, and I'll put my mouse and click on my external photos place, and I'm going to say Command and V. So now we've got it copied. So now we have our full iPhotos library into our external drive. And if you have a large iPhoto library, it could take a lot longer. So make sure you've waited and it's completely copied over. You can see there's really nothing in my photos library. But next thing we're going to do is we're going to train the photos library to open up to our external disk. And so what I'm going to do, you're going to leave this photos library the same. You want to keep that the same. But after library, I'm just going to write external. You see that .photos library is still there, but now I have the photos library external, so I know which one is which. And the next thing we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and move this to the trash. And there's a couple of ways you can do it, but I could just say move to trash. You see it's not in our pictures folder anymore. But the next thing I want to do, I'm not going to delete this yet. I'm going to make sure everything's copied properly. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to my Photos app, whether it be here or inside the applications, and I'm going to hold down the Option key. And while holding it down and keeping it held down, I'll double click and you see now I've had it open here and it's asking me where I would like to open my library. And so I'm going to say Photos Library External right here. And I'm going to choose that library. And it's going to open, and you'll see basically it's the same library as before because I copied it, has nothing in it. And if we go to our preferences now, which is settings on this new computer, and you can see here external, photos, external, and it says Photos Library External. Now our Mac should understand that that's what we want to open by default. So I shouldn't have to use the Option key next time, but let's go ahead and see if it worked. I'm going to close Photos down, quit Photos. And so I'm going to go ahead and empty the trash, and I'll say yes. And now I'm going to double click on Photos without the Option key, and it should open up to my external drive. And now let's just go to our preferences again, or settings, and external, photos, external, and Photos Library External. So now my Photos library is completely running on the external drive and saving me space. Another important thing regarding iPhoto, when you're running it from an external drive, you see the path, Photos External, and where the library is at. If this is not grayed out, go ahead and click on it and say Use as System Photo Library. That way they're automatically connected when you open up iPhoto. So now we're going to do Final Cut Pro in case you use that for your movie editor. Now we're going to move our Final Cut Pro library to our external disk, and we'll check a few settings that you may or may not want to use in order to optimize your storage. You can see here, if we navigate over to this side here, you can see I have a movies section, and I can click on that and you can see I have these in here right now. There's nothing with Final Cut Pro yet, but in case you don't see movies here, what you can do is you can go to Finder and to Settings or Preferences, and then where it says Movies right here, you can just check that box and it'll show. And so we can go ahead and close out of that then. And the next thing we want to do is go ahead and open up Final Cut Pro. I'm going to do that from inside the Applications folder. So we'll just open it up. And we're going to allow it to access files on a removable volume. We'll just say that. We're going to go ahead and just continue here. We're going to go to the Final Cut Pro Preferences, or Settings in this case. And under Import, we're going to make sure that we have this box checked here, Copy to Library Storage Location. We don't want to have the Leave Files in Place checked. This will copy everything to our library location. Make sure that we do that. We'll go ahead and close out of this now. And we're going to go to File, Library Properties, click on that. Now we're going to select Modify Settings next to Storage Locations. Once you've made sure that your media is in library, which is the default setting, you can go ahead and say OK. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and quit Final Cut Pro. Now you can see that this new file has been added to my Movies folder now that I've opened up Final Cut Pro, and that is the Final Cut Pro library. So it's currently untitled, but I'm just going to go ahead and name it Final Cut Pro. And you can see this is my external storage. You can see I've created a special folder for Final Cut Pro, so I'm going to go ahead and open that. Now I can just literally drag this into here. That's one way to copy it, or I can click on it and say Command C and then click into my external drive and click Command V, and it's copied. Now if you had a lot of movie edits already on your Final Cut Pro, that would take a long time, but it obviously didn't take any time for me because I have nothing in Final Cut Pro. So now it's safe to go ahead and move your Final Cut Pro original from your movies into the trash, but don't empty your trash until you've verified that everything that you want to have in your Final Cut Pro on your external drive is the same as it was in your actual Final Cut Pro. You can always move it back from the trash if something went wrong, as long as you haven't deleted it. So now I'm going to double click on the Final Cut Pro from the external drive to train Final Cut Pro to open it from that place. And now you can see Final Cut Pro is open, and now I'm running from an external drive. We've redirected Final Cut Pro to use this library instead of looking for the old one. If you don't have a fresh install of Final Cut Pro like I do, you'll want to just verify that all of your media files and everything that you had in your original version of Final Cut Pro is intact. And now I'll just go ahead and quit Final Cut Pro, and I'm going to go ahead and empty my trash. And now you see there is no Final Cut Pro in Movies. It's only in the external drive. But now I can open Final Cut Pro from the applications, and it should open up to my external drive. And there you have it. Now we're good to go, and we're running Final Cut Pro from our external disk, saving ourselves space on our internal hard drive. Next, we're going to go ahead and look at a few settings and things you can do when you're using Final Cut Pro to save yourself space on your external disk as you start to edit videos and you start to collect more files. So these next steps on Final Cut Pro could save you a lot of space on your external drive while you're editing videos, and you can also regain space that you've already lost from videos that you've made and edited in the past. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into the Final Cut Pro preferences or settings. Under playback, you can see that there is something called background rendering, and you can turn that off, and this create optimized media for multicam clips. You can also turn that off. Now both of these have to do with how your playback works during editing. So for example, background render is being done constantly, and it's rendering files while you're making your videos so that playback is smoother and you can see transitions and other effects better. And so you can decide whether you want to keep that on or not, but it will create a lot of these files that are going to take up a lot of space on your disk. And then the create optimized media for multicam clips, this is something that I have never used before, but from what I understand, if you don't know why you need it on, then you don't need it on. So I'm going to go ahead and just have both of these unchecked. However, if you want to go ahead and leave these on, you can later on delete these files, or if you have a large library already, you can delete these render files and these optimized media without messing up your edit jobs. And so what you would do, close this here. We just click on File and delete generated clip files. And there is no render files in here right now because I don't have any, but I could click on delete optimized media and just say okay. If I had had clips in here already, there would be render files and I could delete those as well.
So as you know, we're editing all of our movies from our external SSD. Now we're going to put our external SSD enclosure with our Western Digital 2 terabyte high-speed SSD to the test by exporting a video I edited from iMovie with a lot of footage in it while we have other applications open, and seeing how our computer holds up while we're using this external SSD and how fast the export is.
Now we've got iMovie opened and we've got a screen recording going. Let's go ahead and see what our activity monitor shows us. And so right now, no swap memory being used, and we're just using about 5.88 gigabytes of our memory. If we go in here and we start scanning through, you can see we scan through pretty easy. I want you to notice here that we have enhanced all of our clips using this enhancer right here. Also, our volume has been changed on all clips. You can see I'm scrolling through here easily, and you can see the actual video is 10 minutes 25 seconds, but it was over 36 minutes of footage. And if I click here, you'll see we have voice enhance here, and we've added some text. We've got some video within video, as you can see here. All the way at the end, we've got our music here. Let's go ahead and start our export, and we're going to see how long it takes, and we're going to do some other things while we're exporting just to see how that affects our whole system. So we'll go ahead, share, and we're going to share it as a file, and we're going to take our resolution and we're going to go for 4K, and we're going to say better quality. And so we're going to see how long it's going to take us. You can see it says it's 3.93 gigabytes estimated. We are going to go ahead and set a timer. So I'm going to go ahead and hit next, and it's going to ask where I want to export it to, and I am going to export it to our external drive. Before I click save, I'm going to go ahead and start our timer. I'll go ahead and click on start and save at the same time. All right. So we've got our countdown timer going. We're going to see how long it takes to export. But while we're waiting for it to export, let's go ahead and check our activity monitor, see if we're using any swap memory, and maybe open up some tabs in Google just to see what happens. Go into our activity monitor, and you can see here we are using 10.44 gigabytes of memory. Now that we're exporting, we're going to go ahead and we're going to check and see what happens if we open up Google, and we'll come back here on the activity monitor to see what's happening. Opening up Google, open up some more screens. Let's check our activity monitor again. We're still only using 9.92 gigabytes of memory. We can see that there is some progress taking place here. It says it's going to take us about 12 minutes to export it. We'll see how accurate that is. Let's scroll through here while the video is downloading and see what happens here. It looks like we're still getting a smooth playback when we scroll across our screen here, which is kind of cool. Let's check our activity monitor again. and we are up to 11.34 gigabytes of memory. No swap memory being used so far, which is good. I'm just going to go ahead and check back in a few with you when we're getting closer to the download being completed. It's also very good to know using our Acasis SSD enclosure with our Western Digital SSD is saving rewrite space on our main hard drive. All right, going ahead and saying stop here. Looks like we're exported. So 22 minutes, 36 seconds approximately to export our movie from iMovie with our screen recorder playing, with iMovie open, with the activity monitor open, with Google tabs open. I can say that I am happy with how fast it did that export, especially considering the amount of footage that was in it. So the video that I exported, I re-exported that video with a couple of small edits at a higher quality, and that second export with all the other apps closed only took about 5 minutes. So that was a great thing to see, that I could possibly be getting much faster exports if I don't have other applications opened. One way or another, I'm still happy with the original export at the time that it was. It's a big improvement from my old MacBook Pro, but thought it was cool that this second export was quicker. So summing things up, I am really happy with our Acasis SSD enclosure. It seems to be working very good with our Mac Mini, and as you saw, even exporting to and editing from our external SSD, our speeds seem to be pretty good. I would definitely recommend getting a high-speed SSD to go with your Acasis so you can have high read and write speeds, something like the Western Digital SN770. So I think it was a great idea to use this SSD enclosure with the external SSD with my Mac Mini to save the hard drive space on my Mac Mini. So I hope you liked my review of the Acasis 40 gigabytes per second NVMe SSD enclosure. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, and share this video, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much for watching.